Hollywood lost its iconic Rifleman in 1992, but Chuck Connors' legacy goes beyond a television program. Connors led a life as dramatic as any Western, from his covert involvement in Cold War diplomacy to scandalous affairs that almost ended his career. Now, 30 years later, the truth is revealed. How a baseball player from Brooklyn rose to Soviet hero status, the dark secret he held until his last day, and the reasons his 3 marriages ended in disgrace. On April 10, 1921, Chuck Connors was born in Brooklyn, New York, as Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors. He joined the Boston Celtics during their inaugural season in 1946 after leaving the Army. He played as a center and forward and was 6 feet 5 inches tall. Connors averaged 4.5 points per game while playing in 49 games during the season. On December 13, 1946, he scored 15 points in a tight victory over the Providence Steamroller, which was his greatest performance to date. However, his basketball career was short-lived. After only a few months with the Connors, Johnny left in February 1947 to pursue baseball, another dream. His big break with the Brooklyn Dodgers came on May 7, 1949, but things didn't go as planned. Connors batted into a double play in his one and only game with the Dodgers, and the team lost. He put up a lot of effort in the lower levels, playing for teams like the Montreal Royals rather than giving up. He returned to the major leagues with the Chicago Cubs in 1951. He had some significant moments over his 66 games that season. He hit his first home run against the New York Giants on July 18, 1951. He hit another one against the Giants on August 26, a month later. Connors finished the season with 48 hits and a 239 batting average. For someone who alternates between 2 sports, it's not awful. The beginning of Chuck Connors' Hollywood career was somewhat surprising. He was a member of the minor league Los Angeles Angels baseball team in 1952. Something strange occurred during a game versus the Sacramento Solons one beautiful afternoon. Chuck's home run was enormous. Not just any home run, it broke down barriers and attracted the attention of Billy Gordon, an MGM casting director who was in the audience. Chuck's craggy face and height, powerful build, were too much for Billy to overlook. He went straight to the locker room after the game and gave Chuck his card. "You ought to consider action," he advised. Chuck, however, didn't believe it. He didn't see himself as an actor and was more interested in baseball. Chuck then injured himself during a game a few weeks later. It gave him time to reflect, but it wasn't serious. Curious, he made the decision to go to MGM and learn more about this acting business. They immediately offered him a screen exam, which surprised him. They loved what they saw when he tried it. During the difficult Great Depression years, his parents, Alan and Marcella Connors, were Irish immigrants who toiled diligently to support their family. Chuck's mother took on menial occupations to supplement his father's income as a longshoreman. Despite the difficulties in life, Chuck learned the importance of perseverance. Chuck signed his first Hollywood contract 3 days later. His life was irrevocably altered by that snap decision. His debut appearance was in the romantic comedy Pat and Mike, which starred Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, 2 well-known Hollywood celebrities. Chuck's contribution was little. Even though he was playing a police captain, it was a significant moment for a new actor. Chuck was anxious, but yet thrilled on his first day of filming. He spent hours getting dressed and arrived early. Even though his sequence didn't happen until late that evening, he was flawless in just 2 takes when the cameras finally rolled. After that, Spencer Tracy even drew him aside and advised him to persevere because he had something. For Chuck, those comments meant the world and gave him the courage to continue. Chuck then threw himself into acting. No matter how big or little the position, he embraced it. He made more than 20 film appearances between 1952 and 1958. His portrayal of Bern Sanderson in Disney's 1957 Old Yeller stands out among his most notable early appearances. The success of the film further increased Chuck's visibility. In addition, he co-starred with Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston in movies like The Big Country and Trouble, along the way with John Wayne. He developed as an actor and established his reputation with each role. Connors appeared in 18 different TV series during this time, in addition to his film career. It was unusual for actors to work in both film and television at the time, but Connors' perseverance and adaptability made it possible for him to be successful in both. He was ready for the next phase of his career after 6 years of arduous effort, a variety of roles, and more than 400 minutes spent in front of a television. It took some time for Chuck Connors to become well known for his role as Lucas McCain in The Rifleman. Connors portrayed a parent in Disney's Old Yeller in 1957. After seeing his performance, The Rifleman's producers decided he was ideal for their production. When the producers offered him more money and even gave him a 5% stake in the show, Connors first declined because the salary was lower than what he was getting from earlier acting roles. That persuaded him to accept the position. Connors began training to get ready after being cast. He learned how to spin and shoot a weapon in a way that looked good on camera, and he also practiced riding a horse. He learned the movements from a pistol specialist named Rod Redwin. Connors practiced until he got it perfect, even though it caused his hands to blister and become uncomfortable. People fell in love with the show right away when it debuted on September 30th, 1958. Chuck spent a lot of time playing sports at the Bay Ridge Boys Club while growing up in a working-class area. He had a desire of playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers since he liked baseball. Chuck's life changed drastically when he was 14. The first episode drew over 14 million people. Lucas McCain, portrayed by Connors, was a harsh but kind man, particularly toward his son Mark, who was portrayed by Johnny Crawford. One of the show's most cherished elements was the father-son relationship. Connors' demonstration of emotion and courage was praised by critics. Another notable item in the show was the rifle. It was no ordinary rifle. It was an 1892 Winchester that had been customized to make it special. To enable Connors to cock the cannon in a flamboyant manner, the lever was enlarged. Every episode began with this spinning motion, which became his signature. A unique screw on the trigger also allowed the rifle to shoot very quickly. McCain was able to outgun a number of villains in a matter of seconds, which created thrilling situations. Winchester eventually produced a real-life model of the gun for fans since it was so well-liked. However, there was more to the show than just action. The Rifleman stood apart for emphasizing family. In the Old West, Lucas McCain, a widower, was raising his son by himself. At the time, most families were depicted on TV as having both parents. Thus, this wasn't typical. The difficulties Lucas encountered as a father and a guardian were frequently discussed in the show. In one episode, he was concerned about his son's safety and found it difficult to allow Mark to testify in court. In another, Lucas had to teach Mark how to manage his emotions while also managing his own rage. Many people were moved by the genuineness of Lucas and Mark's relationship. In messages to Connors, single fathers in particular expressed gratitude for letting them know they weren't the only ones going through difficult times. "Your show has given me the courage to keep going," one widower remarked. Chuck Connors was more than just the Rifleman's star. He also had a significant role behind the scenes. He began going to the writers' sessions around the second season. Some of the plot ideas he submitted became into fan-favorite episodes. During his baseball career, Connors had an encounter with an overly enthusiastic fan that served as the inspiration for one of these, the photographer. Additionally, Connors ensured that the conversation was appropriate for Lucas McCain's persona. He frequently changed lines to incorporate archaic vocabulary because he wanted McCain to sound like a true rancher from that era. McCain's relatability was another important consideration for Connors. Scouts noticed his athletic ability and gave him a scholarship to attend Brooklyn's exclusive secondary school, Adelphi Academy. He took full use of this significant chance. He was a standout athlete at Adelphi, excelling in football, basketball, baseball, and even track. He did not wish for McCain to appear to be a flawless hero. Rather, he advocated for narratives that highlighted McCain's shortcomings and ethical dilemmas. McCain unintentionally kills an innocent guy in the waste incident. Connors battled for this story because he believed it was crucial to illustrate the seriousness of carrying a firearm. In addition, Connors helped new performers get their start, such as Dennis Hopper, who starred in the pilot episode, and brought in guest stars like Duke Snider, his old baseball buddy. Connors' impact was so great by the end of the show that he was given credit for story consulting on a few episodes. He also co-wrote the two-part series finale, ensuring that it revisited previous characters and resolved any loose ends. In its debut season, The Rifleman ranked 4th on television, which is quite an accomplishment considering the fierce competition. With a Nielsen rating of 33.1, it debuted on September 30, 1958, and reached 14.6 million households. Many viewers were drawn in by the father-son bond, while others were captivated by the exciting action scene. By February 1959, 92% of male viewers between the ages of 18 and 49 stated they appreciated the action, while 78% of viewers claimed they followed the show for the family ties. Due to the show's popularity, $2 million worth of products, including comic books, lunchboxes, and toy rifles, were sold within 3 months of its debut. Along with receiving 3 Emmy nominations in its debut season, it maintained its popularity over the course of its 5-year career, finishing 27th in its final season. Reruns of The Rifleman continue to draw viewers decades later. According to a 2018 MeTV survey, viewers 55 and older continued to favor it. Chuck Connors had a significant obstacle following the conclusion of The Rifleman in 1963. He was recognized because of his role as Lucas McCain, but it also kept him in the mold of a Western hero. Viewers were unable to distinguish Connors from the character for the 5 seasons and 168 episodes of the show. This typecasting started to cause issues. Connors turned down numerous offers to perform additional westerns because he wanted to demonstrate that he could play different parts. Indeed, within 2 years of The Rifleman, he rejected 8 Western TV pilots. His career was actually slowed down for a period, despite his hope that this would lead to new opportunities. In the 1964 movie Move Over, Darling, Connors tried something completely different to distance himself from his cowboy persona. He co-starred with James Garner and Doris Day as a formal, austere banker. Although it was a significant departure from his gritty frontier parts, the movie didn't do him any favors. He was still perceived by casting directors and producers as Lucas McCain, and they frequently remarked that he was too Western when he tried out for non-Western parts. Connors considered giving up acting and returning to professional sports in 1965 because he was so upset. In spite of these obstacles, Connors was able to showcase distinct aspects of his acting abilities in 2 TV series. Connors portrayed defense lawyer John Egan in Arrest and Trial 1963-64. By dividing each 90-minute episode into 2 sections, the detective-led investigation and the courtroom drama featuring Connors as the attorney, the show was ahead of its time. Connors demonstrated his ability to portray a refined, intelligent figure by dressing in a suit rather than cowboy attire. Chuck was a powerful first baseman on the baseball field and was recognized as one of Brooklyn's best high school players in 1939. Chuck received athletic scholarships from over 25 institutions after he graduated from high school. He decided to play baseball and basketball at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. Although the sitcom was terminated after only 1 season, critics appreciated his performance. When Connors made a comeback to a Western in 1965 with Branded, the plot was different. He portrayed Jason McCord, a cavalry officer who was expelled from the army after being wrongfully convicted of cowardice. McCord's quest to clear his name and restore his honor was the main subject of the program. Connors had the opportunity to portray a more nuanced and sentimental figure than his earlier simple heroes over the 48-episode, 2-season run. When Connors portrayed Tom Moore in the groundbreaking miniseries Roots in 1977, it was his most impactful performance. From enslavement to the present, the show traced the history of one African-American family. In stark contrast to his previous portrayal, Connors played a brutal plantation owner. Without making Moore into a cartoon, his terrifying portrayal depicted the harsh realities of slavery. About 100 million people watched the show's last episode, demonstrating its enormous success. Connors was nominated for an Emmy for his performance, a unique distinction that demonstrated his capacity to play difficult, contentious roles. Later in his career, Connors made appearances in TV guest spots and B-movies. His performance in the 1979 horror movie Tourist Trap stands out among his most memorable roles. He portrayed Mr. Slauson, a spooky museum proprietor who was encircled by ominous mannequins. Despite its initial poor performance, the movie went on to become a cult favorite. Connors has played odd parts, such as fighting aliens in the 1980 low-budget science fiction film The Daytime Ended. She said that he appeared on major TV shows like Murder, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. He portrayed the antagonist Janos Skorzeny in the 1987-1988 horror action series Werewolf, displaying a darker side to his performance. Like his on-screen personas, Chuck Connors' personal life was full of drama, heartache, and love. Elizabeth Jane Riddell, sometimes known as Betty, was a Canadian model from Montreal who was his first wife. Chuck was playing for the Montreal Royals when they first met in 1948 at one of his baseball games. Their passion progressed swiftly, and Betty hailed from an affluent family. On October 1, 1948, Chuck was just 27 years old and still establishing his career when they were married. They have 4 boys together: Kevin, Stephen, Jeffrey, and Michael. Everything appeared to be going well at first, but once Chuck's acting career took off, particularly after he was cast in The Rifleman in 1958, things began to go wrong. He spent a lot of time abroad working and filming, and accusations that he was unfaithful started to circulate. Their friendship deteriorated behind the scenes. Betty found out he was having an affair with an actress on one of his movie sets in 1961. For her, that was the breaking point. The divorce was finalized in 1962 after she filed for one. He was a backup center on the basketball court, contributing to the team's victory with his height and defensive skills. However, baseball was where he truly made an impression. Professional scouts took notice of Chuck after he hit 2 home runs and had 6 RBIs in a historic 1942 game. It was later discovered that despite their outward politeness, Betty had threatened to publish his extramarital activities unless Chuck accepted her demand during the divorce. In 1963, Chuck wed Kamala Devi, an actress he had met on the Geronimo set, in his second marriage. At a time when interracial couples were still uncommon in Hollywood, Kamala's marriage stood out due to her mixed Indian and British ancestry. Kamala was born in Mumbai, India. Although they collaborated on numerous television series and films, such as Branded and Cowboy, in Africa, and their close bond was admired both on and off-screen, their relationship wasn't always easy. Chuck believed that his tough cowboy persona was what made him successful, despite Kamala's desire for him to pursue more complex roles. Tension resulted from their divergent objectives. Chuck was known for being unfaithful, which caused problems in the marriage as well. Despite their initial ardor, things began to go south, and they got divorced in 1972 after 9 years of dating. The Proud and Damned, their final film together, seemed to be a depressing mirror of their own relationship at the time. The shortest and possibly most contentious of Chuck's 3 marriages was his third. In 1973, he got to know Faith Quabius on the set of Soylent Green, where she played a little part. Faith was actually 33 years younger than Chuck. On September 7, 1977, they were married in a private ceremony in Mexico. They'd been acting like husband and wife on stage so much that they decided to make it genuine. Chuck, who was 56 at the time, joked. However, they were married for just 3 years. They got divorced in 1980. Faith eventually blamed Chuck's drinking for his actions and accused him of being violent during their marriage. Chuck refuted the accusations, but they damaged his reputation. Rumors of infidelity and turbulent relationships plagued Connors throughout his life. Rumors of adultery started during his first marriage and followed him ever since. Although it was never established, one lady said she had a long-term romance with Connors in the 1960s and that he was the father of her child. Connors' flirty demeanor gained much recognition on set. He could win over the birds from the trees, but he couldn't maintain loyalty, according to actress Joan Crawford. Some women refused to collaborate with him because of his notoriety, which even cost him career prospects. Connors was allegedly caught in a compromising scenario with a young actress at a party in one notorious instance in 1975. He apparently lost a big movie part as a result of the controversy, which was kept quiet. His first marriage's children talked about how his way of living affected them. Later, Jeffrey Connors revealed that his father's constant pursuit of excitement had an impact on everyone in his vicinity. Connors seldom ever responded to the rumors in spite of the scandals. "I've lived my life on my own terms," he thought, as he neared the conclusion of his existence. Chuck eventually earned his well-known nickname during this period. He would shout, "Chuck it to me," while he was playing first base, and the term stuck. World War II interrupted Chuck's time at college. "I have no regrets, even though other people might not agree." Chuck Connors stood out in Hollywood because of his strong political beliefs. Chuck participated in a pro-war parade in New York City in 1967, while the majority of Hollywood was opposed to the Vietnam War. He was condemned by some, but he was appreciated by many. Chuck put a lot of effort into promoting his ideals rather than only talking about them. In 1964, he supported Republican presidential candidates, particularly Barry Goldwater. Chuck didn't care that this ruined his career. "I'd sooner lose a job than compromise my values," he once declared. He was also asked to run for Congress in 1972, but he chose to continue performing instead. There were many disagreements in Hollywood during the Vietnam War, but Chuck remained true to his beliefs. He disagreed with the demonstrators and was in favor of the war. He joined others in a 1967 march in support of US troops. "We don't have to fight communism here because we're fighting it over there," he remarked. Many people in Hollywood didn't like this, and he even got into arguments with his co-stars about it. He and Charlton Heston got into a furious argument about the war while he was filming Soylent Green. Chuck did more than just speak. From 1968 to 1972, he made numerous trips to Vietnam to demonstrate his support. Chuck was depressed at the treatment of the veterans after the war. He claimed that the nation had failed them and that they should have been honored with parades rather than demonstration. The Soviet Union's adoration of Chuck's show, The Rifleman, was one of the most unexpected aspects of his career. People admired his character Lucas McCain because he was a strong parent and a champion of justice, and The Rifleman became one of the few American series permitted on Soviet TV during the heightened tensions of the 1960s and 1970s. Approximately 250 million Soviets were viewing the program by 1973. The Soviet leader, Leonid Brezhnev, was also a big admirer. Brezhnev requested to see Chuck Connors during his 1973 visit to Washington, D.C. Something amazing came out of this meeting. Chuck received an invitation from Brezhnev to travel to Moscow later that year. Chuck was treated like a star throughout his 2 weeks there. At the Kremlin, he met Brezhnev, and the two even engaged in a light-hearted competition using the firearms Chuck had previously given him. Chuck also attended a special showing of The Rifleman, where he was wildly popular and asked to sign autographs. Chuck shot a documentary called Peace and Friendship during this trip, which millions of people watched on Soviet television. He enlisted in the army in 1942 and received training at Fort Knox. He was selected as a tank combat teacher due to his height and athletic prowess. Later, he trained soldiers and even taught football players who went on to win national titles at West Point. In the documentary, Chuck met ordinary Soviet individuals and discussed the possibility of goodwill between the US and the USSR. Connors had one final unique job a year before he passed away. He co-starred with Kenny Rogers in the television film The Gambler Returns: The Luck of the Draw, which was released on November 3, 1991. For a brief yet impactful sequence, Connors portrayed his most well-known role, Lucas McCain from The Rifleman. He carried the renowned Winchester gun and was dressed in McCain's iconic attire. McCain challenges the gambler to a gunfight in the scenario. The scenario, which lasted just roughly 90 seconds, reminded me of Connors' favorite part. His final appearance as McCain delighted his fans. The fact that Johnny Crawford, who portrayed his son Mark in The Rifleman, also starred in the film made the occasion much more memorable. Longtime followers were thrilled when they had a brief but heartfelt moment. The film received great reviews and served as the ideal farewell to Connors' most well-known part. He was diagnosed with lung cancer by doctors in 1992 at the age of 71. He probably smoked up to 3 packs of cigarettes a day, which is why he did this. Because Connors was consistently portrayed as robust and healthy, many were taken aback. He continued to make public appearances and first kept his condition a secret. But he was significantly ill by October 1992. To make matters worse, he also had pneumonia, which led to his transfer to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles on October 28. While doctors did everything they could, he fought the sickness for 13 days. Sadly, Connors died on November 10, 1992. Lung cancer was the primary cause of death, with pneumonia playing a significant role. Many people were saddened by his passing, and fans, athletes, and co-stars paid their respects. The legacy that Connors left behind is strong. Fans still adore his show, The Rifleman, which is still broadcast on television today. It inspired later westerns and influenced the way single fathers were portrayed on television. Connors created sports history as well. He was the first player to ever break a backboard during a game in 1946 while playing for the Boston Celtics, and he was one of just 13 players to play in both Major League Baseball, MLB, and the National Basketball Association, NBA. This occurred during warm-ups prior to the Celtics' inaugural home game. Despite having a brief baseball career, Connors left a lasting impression. He assisted in settling a contract dispute between Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale, two pitchers for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1966. Chuck remained involved in athletics despite serving in the military. In his spare time, he played professional hoops in the American Hoops League and semi-professional baseball in Brooklyn. Chuck was honorably discharged from the Army in 1946 after 3 years of service. This was a significant event that increased baseball players' power.